There's a brutal truth most people don't want to hear. If someone knows what you want more than you do, they already control you. Maybe it's approval, maybe it's love, maybe it's just peace and quiet. But the second they sense that weakness, they can use it to guide your choices without you even realizing it. Think about it. Ever said yes just to avoid disappointing someone? Ever apologized when you weren't actually wrong? Ever stayed silent just to keep the peace? That's manipulation. And it's not always loud, it's not always dramatic. Most of the time it's quiet, invisible. It's someone planting an idea in your head and making you believe it was yours all along. Now here's the question most people never ask. How do you stop it? Not with anger, not by fighting everyone, but by understanding how the game works and how to take your power back without becoming cold or cruel. And that's where Machiavelli comes in. No, not the cartoon villain version you've heard about, the real one, the strategist who understood people better than most ever will. Before we begin, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video. It helps me keep bringing you content like this. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a future insight. Let's get into it, because this is how you make sure no one ever pulls your strings again. So who was Machiavelli, really? Most people hear the name and immediately think of scheming politicians, backstabbing royals, or shady power plays. The word Machiavellian itself has become a kind of insult. But here's the thing most people don't know. Niccolò Machiavelli wasn't trying to turn people into villains. He was just brutally honest about how the world works. Born in 1469, Machiavelli was a diplomat in a chaotic, cutthroat Italy. Loyalty didn't mean much. People switched sides, got betrayed, and were executed all in the same week. So he wrote The Prince, not as a fantasy, but as a survival guide, a kind of here's how things really go down when people want power. But here's where it gets interesting. You don't have to be a king or a warlord to use what he taught, because manipulation isn't reserved for palaces. It happens in offices, in friendships, in relationships. And most of the time, the people getting played don't even realize it. That's why this video isn't about turning you into some cold strategist. It's about helping you see through the tactics, so no one gets to control you through guilt, flattery, or fear again. Think of Machiavelli not as a villain, but as a reality check. Someone who looked at how people really behave, not how we wish they did. And if you can use just a few of his principles in your own life, you'll stop feeling like a pawn in someone else's game. You'll start thinking, speaking, and deciding on your own terms. So stick with me, because what you'll learn today might just change how you handle every relationship going forward. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt like someone was quietly pulling your strings without you realizing it? Let's get honest about something uncomfortable. Most people don't want to believe life is a power game. It sounds too cold, too calculating. But here's the truth. Power dynamics exist in every relationship you've ever had. It's not just about money or politics or CEOs in glass offices. Power shows up in your friend group, your family, your job, your romantic life. It shows up when someone pressures you, when they guilt you, when they smile while slowly making you feel smaller. And the people who manipulate? They're not always monsters. Sometimes they're people you care about. Sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. But you know how it feels. That tightening in your chest when you say yes, even though you want to say no. That weird guilt when you think about setting a boundary. That moment where you do what they want, just to avoid an argument, just to avoid being seen as selfish. That's not just emotion. That's power at work. And the first step to never being manipulated again is recognizing that power doesn't have to look like force. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it says, "I'm just trying to help." And sometimes it sits silently, waiting for you to doubt yourself so it can step in and decide for you. Machiavelli knew this. In his time, kings and popes didn't always rule with swords. They ruled with words, with favors, with fear. He understood that the people who win are the ones who see the invisible rules. Everyone else is too nice or too naive to acknowledge. And you might be thinking, but I don't want to play games. I want real, honest connections. Good. So do I. This isn't about becoming fake, it's about becoming aware, because if you don't understand how the game is played, you're not playing. You're just being moved around. Here's a simple example. Ever had a friend who always needed something from you, but when you needed them, suddenly they were too busy, or their phone magically stopped working, and still, you kept showing up for them? That's not just bad luck, that's imbalance. They figured out what you needed, connection, approval, not feeling alone, and they used it to keep the upper hand, or maybe it's at work. Your manager phrases a task like a favor, but it's actually an expectation. Hey, you're so good at this, mind handling it again? And suddenly you're carrying extra weight, without recognition, without reward. But you don't want to look difficult, right? So you keep going. That's manipulation wrapped in flattery. Classic move. It works because people don't want to seem unkind. So they say yes with a smile, while something inside them sinks. And the most dangerous part, you probably think it's your fault. You think, I'm just being nice. Or maybe I'm overreacting. But you're in a power game you didn't agree to play, and the only way out is to start seeing the board clearly. Machiavelli wasn't saying kindness is weakness. He was saying, don't confuse kindness with blindness. Be generous, sure. Be compassionate, always. But don't let that compassion become the very thing someone uses against you. You can be kind without being a pushover. You can be giving without being guilted. You can be open without being used. And it all starts by realizing that yes, this world has rules. And those rules aren't always written down. Sometimes they're whispered, sometimes they're learned the hard way. But once you understand how people try to gain the upper hand, you stop being easy to manipulate. You won't react from guilt. You won't chase approval. You'll respond, not react. You'll pause instead of panic. You'll see the game being played and calmly choose to step outside of it. That's not cold, that's power. And when you understand the dynamics of power, you don't have to control anyone, because no one can control you. Recognizing the game doesn't mean you play dirty. It means you stop playing dumb. Let's break it down. If you really want to protect yourself, you can't just recognize manipulation when it's obvious. You have to understand how manipulators actually think. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Manipulators don't see you the way you want to be seen. They see you as a tool, as an opportunity. They scan your emotions like a locksmith scans a lock, looking for where it turns, where it bends, where it gives in. And they don't always come with a villain mustache and an evil laugh. Some of the most manipulative people are calm, polite, helpful, even charming. But behind that, they've got one goal: to get what they want, with as little resistance as possible. So how do they do it? They don't force, they influence, subtly, quietly, using tools that feel soft but cut deep. One of the most common tools, guilt. Not screaming guilt, Not rage, just quiet disappointment. That sigh, that, look, that I guess I'll do it myself. And suddenly you're volunteering for something you didn't want to do, just to avoid feeling like the bad guy. Then there's flattery. You're the only one I trust with this. You're just so good at handling these things. Feels nice, right? Until you realize you're being buttered up for a favor, a chore, a sacrifice. Flattery isn't always a compliment. Sometimes it's bait. Then comes urgency. They need it now. Right now. They don't give you time to think, to step back, to check in with yourself, and that's the point. Manipulators don't want you thinking clearly. They want you overwhelmed. Because a distracted mind is an easy one to control. Another one, the silent treatment. They don't say anything. They just withdraw. No calls, no replies, no explanation. You feel anxious. You wonder what you did wrong. And then when they finally reappear, you're so relieved you'll agree to anything just to keep them from disappearing again. It's control without words, and it's powerful. And maybe the most dangerous tactic of all, fake loyalty. They make you feel like they've always got your back, but only when it benefits them. They'll support you until you say no. Then suddenly they're gone, disappointed, cold, and you're left questioning if you're selfish for having boundaries. But let's be clear, you're not selfish for protecting your energy. You're not cruel for saying no. You're not wrong for not playing along. Manipulators pick targets who are empathetic, soft-hearted, emotionally intelligent, the kind of people who care too much about how others feel and not enough about how they feel themselves. If that sounds like you, you're not broken. You're just wide open, and it's time to close the gates just a little. Here's what Machiavelli would tell you. People are quick to forget favors, and they remember. Slights, even imagined ones. Translation, you could give your time, your love, your loyalty, and one small no might be all it takes for someone to flip on you. So don't offer yourself on a silver platter. Be kind, be fair, but stay grounded. Let's say someone asks you for help. Again and again, you're busy, you're tired, but they guilt you and you give in. Ask yourself, would they do the same for you? If the answer's no, you already know what's happening. It's not mutual, it's manipulation, wrapped in emotional packaging. Have you ever caught yourself bending over backward for someone, then realized they never returned the favor? That feeling? That's your intuition screaming, wake up. You don't need to be aggressive to protect yourself. You just need to be honest. You don't need to be suspicious of everyone. You just need to stop ignoring the signs that don't feel right. Because manipulators will always look for the person who hesitates, the person who doesn't want to cause drama, the person who wants to be liked more than they want to be respected. And that's the shift. Respect over approval, clarity over comfort, peace over people-pleasing. Once you learn how manipulators think, you stop taking their bait. You pause, you breathe, and instead of reacting emotionally, you respond with calm power, and that's what they hate the most. They can't guilt you, can't rush you, can't trap you, because you're finally seeing the strings and choosing not to. Dance, here's the part most people get wrong about Machiavelli. They think he was telling people to be cold-blooded manipulators, but really, he was warning us about how people already behave, about what happens when you're too trusting, too naive, too slow to realize when you're being played. The power of Machiavelli isn't in becoming a puppet master. It's in finally cutting the strings that have been on your back for years. Let's talk about how to do that without becoming someone you hate. One of his most famous lessons is this: appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. At first glance, it sounds sneaky, but think about it this way: not everyone deserves to know your strength. If you show all your cards up front, manipulators know exactly where to strike. They'll poke at your soft spots, use your kindness, exploit your openness. But if you hold back just enough, if you move with quiet confidence instead of loud approval seeking, they never get the full blueprint. They don't know how much you see, and that makes you harder to control. Another principle: never outshine the master. This one hits hard in the workplace. Maybe you've been there, doing your best, producing results, getting noticed, and then suddenly your boss starts treating you like a threat. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your light made them feel insecure. Here's what Machiavelli understood: people in power will protect their egos before they protect fairness. So if you want to survive in those environments, sometimes it's smarter to play it cool. Don't fake incompetence. Just don't flash your brilliance in their face. Pick your moments. Let your work speak. And when it's time to level up, do it without needing their applause. Then there's the brutal one. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Now let's be real. You're not trying to terrify people. You're not building an empire. But what this really means is respect matters more than popularity. If people love you because you never say no, because you always sacrifice your needs, because you bend yourself into knots to make everyone comfortable, then they don't actually love you. They love the benefit of you, the convenience of you. Machiavelli would say, it's better to be someone who is respected, even if that respect comes with distance, than someone who is liked, but constantly taken for granted. So how do you get that respect? By doing what he hinted at all throughout The Prince. Be clear, be consistent, be calm. Don't over-explain, don't argue to convince. Set your standard, and let your actions speak louder than any long speech ever could. 1. More powerful idea from Machiavelli: trust must be earned, not given. Most of us were raised to believe the opposite, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to assume good intentions, to open up quickly, because that's how you form connection, right? But here's what manipulators rely on: your automatic trust. They know that if they smile, flatter you, seem kind, you'll give them access to your time, your energy, your attention, your emotions. And once they're in, they don't always treat that access with care. They use it. So, here's the switch. Don't start with full trust. Start with openness, sure, but make trust something that grows, not something you hand out like candy. Watch how people handle your boundaries. Watch how they talk about others. Watch how they act when you say no. That tells you everything you need to know, because someone who respects your no deserves to be near your yes. Someone who handles silence with grace deserves to hear your voice. And someone who doesn't need to control you is someone worth being close to. These Machiavellian principles are not about domination. They're about liberation, freeing yourself from being at the mercy of everyone else's agenda. It's not about tricking others. It's about not being tricked anymore. It's about moving with intention, knowing when to speak and when to listen, knowing when to hold your ground and when to let someone reveal their true colors without you lifting a finger. And above all, it's about not letting fear of disapproval, of rejection, of looking rude run your life. You can be strategic without being fake. You can be calm without being passive. You can be powerful without being cruel. Because what Machiavelli knew, and what most people forget, is that control isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision to no longer be ruled by guilt, flattery, or fear. You don't have to be cold, you just have to be clear. So now that you understand how manipulators think, you're probably wondering, what can I actually do about it? How do you shut down manipulation in real time without losing your cool or your integrity? Good news is, you don't need to argue. You don't need to win. You don't even need to prove a point. What you need are tools, simple ones, powerful ones, ones that quietly say, you're not getting past me today. Let's start with one of the most underrated techniques out there, gray rocking. It works like this. Manipulators feed on drama. They want reactions. They want emotion. If you're lit up, anxious, panicked, or even angry, they've got you. That's fuel. But if you go emotionally flat, boring, uninteresting, non-reactive, you become useless to them. And they usually move on. Say they're trying to bait you, poking, guilt-tripping, creating chaos. Instead of snapping, you just say, okay, or got it. No story, no reaction, just quiet, neutral, like a rock. Hence, gray rocking. Because you become a dull, lifeless object to their chaos. It's not about being rude, it's about not feeding the machine. Next up, the delayed response. This one is a lifesaver. Manipulators love to trap you in urgency. They want decisions now. Commitments now, guilt trips now. So here's your move. Pause. Say, let me think about it, or I'll get back to you tomorrow, or even just, I need a moment. This gives you time to breathe, to ask yourself, do I actually want to say yes? Or am I afraid to say no? That space, those few hours, can completely shift your decision, and it sends a message. You are not someone who gets pushed into corners. Another solid move. Question the question. This one is so simple, it's brilliant. If someone tries to trap you with a loaded question, why are you being so selfish? Why won't you help me after everything I've done for you? Don't defend. Don't explain. Instead, ask, why are you asking me that? Or what do you mean by that? Just like that, you take back control. You make them clarify their intentions. And most manipulators hate having to explain themselves, because their power lives in your emotional confusion, not your clarity. Let's move on to verbal shields. These are phrases that block manipulation like armor. They're calm, they're respectful, and they stop the emotional charge right in its tracks. Try these. That doesn't work for me. I hear you, but I'm not comfortable with that. I understand your perspective. My answer is still no. Or the classic, let me get back to you on that. No panic, no over-explaining, just firm, honest language that gives you space. Now, if someone keeps pushing, there's one more move I recommend. Walk away. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need a speech. You don't need revenge. You just stop engaging. You can say, I'm stepping away from this conversation. Or simply go silent. Because sometimes the strongest boundary is not fighting, it's disappearing. Remember, not everyone deserves your time. Not everyone earns the right to be close to you. Protecting your peace is not rude, it's intelligent. You don't need to change who you are. You just need to stop letting others decide how you feel, what you say, and what you give. And when you use these tools, gray rocking, delayed response, questioning intent, verbal shields, walking away, you send a quiet but powerful message. I see the game, and I'm not playing anymore. Which of these techniques do you think you'll use first? Or have you already used some of them before? Tell me in the comments. So here's the truth that doesn't get said enough. You don't get manipulated because you're weak. You get manipulated because you care. You want to be kind, you want to avoid conflict, you want to be liked. But somewhere along the way, that desire starts costing you your peace. So let's talk about power. Not the external kind, not status or dominance. I mean the inner kind, the kind that doesn't need anyone's permission. Because when you rebuild your inner power, manipulation just stops working. People can try their old tricks, but the buttons they used to push don't react the same way anymore. Why? Because you've changed the wiring. That begins with one huge mindset shift. You teach people how to treat you. If you let people interrupt you constantly, they learn that your words aren't a priority. If you say yes when you mean no, they learn that your boundaries are flexible. If you always shrink back when challenged, they learn that discomfort makes you fold. But the reverse is also true. If you calmly say, "That's not okay with me," if you walk away from disrespect, if you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening, you're teaching the world something else. You value yourself. And once that becomes your baseline, manipulators lose interest, because what they're really looking for is someone who doubts their own worth. So how do you rebuild that self-worth? You start small. Keep the promises you make to yourself. Speak kindly to yourself, especially after hard conversations. Notice when your gut says, "This feels wrong," and actually listen to it. You don't need to become fearless overnight. You just need to stop abandoning yourself to make others comfortable. Remember what Machiavelli knew and what most of us forget. The strongest leaders don't need to prove anything. Their calm comes from within. Their clarity is quiet. Their power isn't loud, it's consistent. So if you've ever felt like people walk all over you, if you felt used, drained, ignored, this is your signal to return to yourself. You don't need to shout. You don't need to fight. You just need to remember who the hell you are. The more solid your self-respect is, the less space there is for manipulation. You're not here to be a puppet. Not in your relationships, not at work, not in life. You're here to move with purpose, to protect your peace, to stop second-guessing your worth every time someone pushes your boundaries. Machiavelli didn't write his ideas for kings alone. He wrote them for people trying to survive in a world that doesn't always play fair. And sometimes, survival means learning how the game works, so you can choose not to be played. You don't have to manipulate others to live with strength. You just need to stop letting guilt, fear, and pressure dictate your decisions. That's the real power. Not control over others, but unshakable clarity over yourself. If you found value in this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future insights on Stoicism and self-improvement. And tell me below, what was your biggest takeaway from this video? Because if this helped you see even one toxic pattern a little more clearly, then that's a win, and we're just getting started.